Cody Rhodes chose his behind and CM Punk straps on. These are our last minute rumours ahead of WWE Bash in Berlin. We're going to go through the whole card as well as rumoured returns, who's going to be appearing who hasn't already been announced, and plenty of individual news about individual competitors and exclusive news from the WWE. We're going to start with the Women's Tag Team Championship match. It's been a long time coming, this one, in the WWE basically forgot who their women's champions were. The idea was that Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair would be the focal point of the entire division, but unfortunately Jade has failed to set the world alight as the WWE were hoping for. As such, Jade Cargill has recently been working at the Performance Center in Florida with her tag partner Bianca Belair, as well as Natalya, despite the fact that Natalya apparently doesn't have a contract right now, and Charlotte Flair, despite the fact that Charlotte Flair has not yet returned to the WWE. They are working to hone the skill set of Jade Cargill, but there are many in WWE who believe she probably should have gone through NXT for a little while just to work out the exact system that the WWE use to announce their next moveset. The current champions, Alba Fyre and Isla Dawn, have barely been used during their championship run so far, suggesting heavily that their win in the UK was just to pop a UK crowd. No actual push has come from it, and while they've created a number of backstage promos and recorded a lot of segments, they've largely been forgotten and unused, as well as having quite a lot cut. Isla Dawn and Alba Fyre simply don't seem to have the focus of the WWE right now, so while Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill have not quite got the world talking, certainly it seems like they're going to get the gold back. No men's tag team matches are planned for this event, just as no men's tag team matches are planned for the WWE. I think Triple H keeps forgetting he has a tag division. The tag division is not believed to be ready for the level of exposure of a PLE, simply because most of the tag teams there are on the lower end of the card. But that's primarily because the tag division doesn't really exist. Teams like Pretty Deadly and the Street Profits are considered key and are primed to be focal points going forwards, but they're largely being thrown into factions just to desperately try and get them onto TV. And the faction leader for the Street Profits just left. The Terror Twins, that being Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, go up against Daddy Dom and Liv Morgan of the Judgment Day. We are no longer dirty, we are now daddy. Speaking of that, these are the Terror Twins, not the Terror Twinks. Do not Google the Terror Twinks. It's not the same thing, despite being very similar. WWE are apparently thrilled with the transition from Dirty Dom to Daddy Dom, primarily because the only real difference is the girl stood next to him. There's been a few conversations about the women's division. I've reached out on a number of occasions to try and work out why the women's division is mostly built around Dominic Mysterio right now, but apparently in the absence of Becky Lynch and Alexa Bliss, creative genuinely think this is the best use of the women's championship. We are still building to another Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley match, likely at Bad Blood, but for now they're essentially killing time with both sides of this feud. Dominic Mysterio isn't actually key to this at all, he's just a buffer to keep Damian Priest and Finn Balor apart. While Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan are not necessarily the plan for WrestleMania, Finn Balor and Damian Priest are, so they are working to keep them apart as long as possible. Dominic Mysterio, Carlito, JD McDonough, and apparently just keeping the entire tag division hostage is key to that. Dominic, as always, is likely to be the fall guy here. Priest and Rhea Ripley are on another stratosphere compared to their opponents, and their recent face turn has taken them to a new level of stardom. A win here will be beneficial to them. Dominic Mysterio likely takes the pin. Liv Morgan will be protected as long as she holds that championship. CM Punk has screwed Drew McIntyre at every opportunity, and now he's going to strap on. Clearly WWE are paying attention to the way I do things because this is basically low budget porn. The WWE are keeping both CM Punk and Drew McIntyre away from the day-to-day matches, largely due to the status of their new contracts. CM Punk renewed his contract and renegotiated some clauses recently, whereas Drew McIntyre signed a new deal around WrestleMania time. It not only gave him a stronger push, but it also means less dates and less matches, meaning that they can take more of a break, Drew McIntyre can go home more often. It's all very valuable. As part of those new contracts, however, they are treated as the star attractions that they've become since. Lots of promos, very little actual wrestling on Raw. The strap match is step 2 after the SummerSlam match, with Seth Rollins now out of the picture and unlikely to return before this feud finishes. Punk seems set to win this one before we head into the cell for the decider at Bad Blood, in a match that I'm not sure who's going to win, to be honest. I'm thinking McIntyre, but I'm not sure there. Mania this year is being built on the chase. So Damian Priest, for example, chasing Finn Balor, as I've mentioned previously. But Punk and McIntyre both have other Mania options and are looking to have wrapped up their feud before the beginning of 2025. CM Punk is set for a date with Seth Rollins, and we'll see how much screwing goes on there. Whereas Drew McIntyre will be chasing Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship in possibly the most European WrestleMania Night 1 main event you've ever seen. I'm going to briefly touch on LA Knight's open challenge on SmackDown for the United States Championship, primarily because, to be blunt, it does play into what's going to happen with Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. This was a late edition of SmackDown. WWE officials are attempting to convince Triple H to add more matches to his PLE cards. On this occasion, you can't really call it successful because it was pushed back to SmackDown, but Triple H does like to have PLE promo segments in the middle of his shows. This does mean that he can complete what he's looking for at the moment. The aim is to get LA Knight and Cody Rhodes a lot more involved in being fighting champions. Logan Paul, Roman Reigns, not those guys. But he now has the champions that he's looking for, and they are the guys that he wants to build a company around. The United States Championship is obviously not to the level of the top championship that Cody Rhodes holds, but there are still plenty of people in a great spot to benefit from this. AJ Styles is the one I've got my eye on, particularly when you consider that we started with Santos Escobar. We move on then to the undisputed WWE Not Universal Championship. Cody Rhodes takes on Kevin Owens. This once again is an attempt to deliver a fighting champion compared to what we did have, which is Roman Reigns. They're also applying more character traits to Cody Rhodes, particularly at this point, portraying him as an idealist who shows his back to his friends too often, opening him up for betrayal. Who better to have that next match with than Betrayer-in-Chief Kevin Owens? Infamously Festival of Friendship, but this guy betrays everybody. Well, sorry guys, I'm going to have to spoil this one for you. Kevin Owens will not be turning on Cody Rhodes. He's not expected to turn, and the match will likely be a clean one-on-one that goes on with no interference and without a hitch. Cody will have a lot of people teasing turning on him to try and make Randy Orton's sudden but inevitable betrayal seem less obvious. All of this is building to Orton versus Cody. Kevin Owens gets a main event because it's actually not going to be the main event, but he gets a championship match because he's heading into a contract negotiation, as is Sami Zayn, and it provides the WWE with a little more leverage. As disappointing as it will be for many to hear, this will simply be a quality wrestling match. No outside interference, no massive storyline advancement, just good quality wrestling. How horrible. Before we get to the main event, the Wyatt Sicks are not expected to appear at all on the Bash in Berlin card. They are not expected to be the promo segment that I mentioned earlier, nor is Alexa Bliss expected to be involved at this point. Alexa Bliss, Charlotte Flair, both close to returning, but not quite there yet for the storylines that they are waiting to have kick in. The Wyatt Sicks are building a foundation in which we may see the return of Alexa Bliss, but they've got Nikki Cross right now to balance out anyone who may get in their way from Chad Gable's American Made. As an aside, while I'm led to believe that they won't be travelling to Berlin, Alexa Bliss is said to have reported in to Florida recently. She has not joined the WWE tours, but she is communicating with WWE management about her return. That's what I'm hearing at least. So finally, our main event is for the World Heavyweight Championship, an opportunity for Randy Orton to win the big one in a way that really sets him back in that chase to become the overall record holder for most championship wins. And this immediately means that Randy Orton has an opportunity here. That said, this is Gunther we're talking about, and I honestly cannot imagine a world in which Gunther loses this quickly. This is by far the best match they could give us, and that's why it's set to main event. Much like the Nia Jax versus Rhea Ripley main event in Australia, this whole show is built to make for one happy European audience. This is also the reason that there's been recent comments, primarily from Randy Orton, stating that Gunther is German when he isn't, something which Gunther would naturally have corrected, apart from the fact that he's been told not to. They are in the hopes of whipping up the crowd in Germany further by encouraging them to believe he's one of their own, even though on technicalities he is not. At the same time, Randy Orton is expected to work heel in Europe. He's a very clever and intelligent man who will take the opportunity to recognise that Gunther is going to be a face, whether he wants him to be or not. As such, while this will be a star-making turn for Gunther, no question, it is Randy Orton who will be doing most of the legwork working heel here. This will be the beginning of a lot of long-term teases for Randy Orton turning heel, primarily as we build towards his eventual turn on Cody Rhodes, but do not expect to see that turn this week. He'll work heel, but when we get back to America, he'll be face once again. In fact, I don't expect to see this actual heel turn until early next year, primarily because I think Cody goes to WrestleMania against The Rock and then feuds with Randy Orton afterwards. I also kind of think Randy Orton might be the one to take it, but that's just me. I hear voices. The typical Triple H strategy at the moment is for your PLEs to be a bit dull, to be blunt. It's focused more on wrestling than the big shock factors that we used to get under Vince McMahon, or that we've seen at All In quite recently. That does also mean that once the show is over, the only thing to really talk about is, wow, that wrestling was great, huh? And you don't end up watching it again. I expect Orton versus Gunther to be match of the night, but I also think Punk versus McIntyre will be the one that people care about. Even though Triple H quite cleverly saw that the King of the Ring final ended inconclusively by accident, saved it for this moment to try and make it a huge match, and it is. I do think, unfortunately, this one might be a little bit dull. I've mentioned Punk versus Rollins and McIntyre versus Gunther for the Mania card earlier in the video. If you want to know more about what I'm expecting to see at next year's WrestleMania, click the video that's on screen now. There's less Jacob Fatu than you'd think, but give it time.